Hey guys, right now it is sprinkling and we are going to do a small or short garden tour. Because I want to show you guys what's emerging, what's coming up, what's showing out, the trees that are leafing out, without going into too much. Starting with the front garden scape, we do have a hawthorn tree kind of planted in front of this huge evergreen. In fact, this is pretty much where the garden starts. And as we walk further in, we're met with a Himalayan birch tree that's just about leafing out. The Himalayan birch tree has these tassels. This is kind of where the seeds form before they end up falling to the ground sometime maybe in summer, if not fall. And then if we back up, you can see this beautiful background, or all these trees that are growing throughout the backyard. And at the base, a few perennials like the lupins that have made a return. A few of our spring bulbs still going strong, which I believe are just about only the blue squill. Some of them are even going into seed. It looks a bit messy for right now before I come in and clean up, but there is ferns growing all along the planting areas. So if I come back here, you can see a fern here, here, and here. I believe these are the autumn brilliance ferns. By the way, guys, if you want a fast-growing tree, place a birch tree in ground. This tree was placed in ground, I think, around 2 years ago. And yeah, it's growing very, very, very quickly. When I purchased the tree, it was around yay high, and as you can tell, a lot larger now. One of my favorite patches of perennials just so happens to be the coneflowers. This is the second year they're making a return for spring. But I did start these guys from seed 3 years ago. So that's saying something or showing something. And I believe these are a purple echinacea as well as green twister. Around 3 years ago, I did place these Lastiocarpus in ground, and I placed them in a grouping of 3. So there's one here, and one there. These guys are used to growing close together, actually a lot closer together than what I placed in. These guys are used to growing in clusters or in groupings throughout the mountains. These guys are an alpine fir, and as you can see, it's putting on its new growth. It's kind of the chartreuse green. In between the alpines, you'll see things like Virginia that have lovely pink flowers. Really, it's pretty, so pretty. And Virginias are really this tough plant that will pretty much grow anywhere, such as like sunny areas as well as shady areas without a problem. It's also hard to tell, but there are hydrangeas growing in amongst this area. You just can't really see them without their leaves. And if we take a step back, this is my patch of lambsare. Now, this is the Helen von Stein lambsare, one of my favorite lambsare. It gets really, really large leaves or foliage, which kind of gives off this light green, if not kind of bluish tone to it. It just looks amazing. Making our way further in, we're met with a crepe leaf Japanese maple tree. We did go over in a previous video, and behind it is an oak leaf hydrangea. And I believe that oak leaf hydrangea is a Munchkin hydrangea, which pretty much is just a dwarf. So I think it gets about 4 to 6 foot wide and only maybe 4 foot tall. And off to the distance, you can see this weeping spruce, I believe. I seen one of these placed in ground at a nursery, and I just had to have one. It was placed right underneath a Japanese maple tree and was doing fine. So I decided to do that kind of myself. And so far, here's the results. It's looking absolutely lovely, starting to spread about the garden floor. In fact, 3 years ago, this thing was very narrow and very small. Although I'm not sure if placing it too close to this golden Korean fir was the best ideal. This golden Korean fir does reach heights of 20 foot tall and about 15 foot wide within 10 years. It might even get less because I've had this tree for 3 years and so far it's barely gone anywhere. In fact, the height on it is relatively short. It makes great contrast between the Japanese maple trees. It does get lovely red cones on it, as you can see, before they end up going to kind of this more bluish purple hue, and then eventually to brown. And if you can see, I love to put a lot of vegetables also growing around some of the lovely ferns and herbaceous plants. So you can see these are green onions growing in this area. I usually come through here and I will pick these guys and use them in some of my meals. They also give off a smell when you start touching them, so it's pretty nice to walk around. When you also start messing around with these guys or accidentally break one, they do give off a good, lovely smell, and I love it so much. By the way, guys, a lot of the ferns in the garden are actually these lovely light colors, as I cut them back in one of the previous videos, maybe a few weeks ago. But most, if not all, are making a return right around now. Some of the fiddles are looking a lot stranger than others, kind of like little alien plants. Now, if we look further in, you can see there are some Japanese maple trees here and there, like some of the smaller varieties, or versions that kind of get more wide than tall. And I thought it would be really cool to just mix and commingle the Japanese maple trees with the oak leaf hydrangeas, some of the Jurassic ferns, and then lovely heuchera of all different colors and shapes. Oh my. I love the fiery color on this first flame, but that's besides the point. I really think these heuchera really echo the Japanese maple tree that we have here, which from the underneath looks a lot more orange, but if you really come up close and get a good look, it still looks orange, but a little bit more on the red side here and there. Really just depends on the angle you're looking at it from. I will say that the daffodils are a bit spent. A lot of the flowers have gone away and are trying to go to seed, but we will cut these guys back just to prevent them from using too much energy. Or pretty much to just send that energy back into the bulbs. If you look there, that is one lovely hellebore. It really contrasts well with some of the evergreens in the area, as well as the daffodils. It's super interesting to see kind of a red color or a purple color growing in amongst green, because it really does show up well. Headed further back into the garden, we're met with a lot more Japanese maple trees that are going into leaf, as well as a few evergreens here and there, still with their yellow color, at least for the spring months. Now, this is the area that hasn't really been worked on. It's kind of filled with a ton of weeds. We will be going through here and adding plants throughout the year, just to kind of fix this area up back there. We did put in a few structure plants or shrubs here and there to kind of take up some space. But eventually, we do need some of the understory plants or perennials, shrubs, and herbaceous plants. In fact, this is kind of a view from above at some of the alpine firs placed in this other grouping or secondary grouping. There is a pine down there, which is a lovely blue color. And I think this is just one oak leaf hydrangea up here. Super pretty. I did start some of the plantings, but again, weeds will pop up anywhere. Those are Virginia down there. So they have gone into flower. I'm hoping that they kind of take over this area a tad bit so that we don't get too many weeds once more. You can really see the difference between the non-cleared area of weeds versus the cleared area of weeds that I plan on working on this spring. I've been pulling weeds here and there, working my way through the garden little by little, trying not to overdo it. By the way, this is my 4-foot ginkgo tree, Princeton Century. I put it up here because I thought it would look lovely looking from down below. It will get a spread of, I believe, 20 foot, if not 15 foot, and reach heights of maybe 40 to 50 foot within some amount of time. And I really gave it the space to do so. It will grow above some of the trees, like the redbud trees, as well as some of the smaller varieties of Japanese maple trees here in the garden, such as Osakazuki. But I felt like they would need some of that shade anyways, since they are in full sun, and they'd probably do better in part sun. And if you look beneath some of the trees, you might see a bit of moss. I intentionally placed moss down beneath the trees just to give it some aesthetic please. And you'll see licorice fern also growing in amongst that moss. Now, as I kind of point towards the back garden here, you can see there's a few trees here and there underplanted with daffodils and all sorts of ferns, poppies, maybe a couple boxwoods here and there. Wow, it literally just got sunny, so I'm gonna take you guys back this direction. It's also kind of a mess back here. In fact, most of the things right here are all weeds. And I say all weeds because even these bellflowers I consider a weed. I do plan on getting a lot of these up along with the dandelions just to clear the area because they have been pretty much spreading through my entire garden and it's kind of hard to control them, at least because of the squirrels digging them up and placing them in different portions of the garden. And that's just the bellflowers. And one little project I have that I need to clean up around is this small pond. So we have two ponds, one the small pond and the second being a big pond. The small pond is usually where the frog spawn go, and they pretty much grow up inside here, although there is nothing here yet, but I have hope for later in the season they might show up. I plan on adding a bunch of rocks around this area to kind of give this small pond some life, but we'll get to that eventually once we pull many of the weeds in this area. Right now, I am standing next to the Ijama Sanago, which is right above the small pond. You can see there's a few hellebore down there, a couple ferns, and then one hydrangea right before it reaches a ton of weeds. In fact, most of this area is weeds, including a shrub that I need to, or I think it was a fruit tree that fell down like years and years ago. I need to cut it back or cut it out and get rid of the stump. And I did put a Avondale redbud right in front of it to kind of take its place. That tree did fall previous to me even moving in here, and it was a stump long ago. Right below me is a compost area. I put this in, I want to say last year, actually it was. So I put a total of 4 stakes in, one here, one there, a third back there, one here. By the way, where I keep all my pots as well. I started the compost area last fall. I did originally put just leaves in there, then I ended up adding any sort of debris and whatnot. But past this area, if we kind of come out of the works, you'll see I have hostas. I put one peony in ground, and I think that's a heuchera. I can't remember the name to it, but it's quite this lovely yellow color. This area actually needs a lot of work. There's a few trees and shrubs here and there, but again, if you've seen it from down below, there's a lot of weeds as well. One of my favorite trees, I can't wait for it to grow up, is this oak tree. And this oak tree is pretty much a narrow grower, so it doesn't get too wide, but it does get pretty tall. I believe the name of it is Crimson Spire, and it's just about ready to start leafing out. As you can see, the buds are starting to expand. The leaves are relatively small and easy to clean, so they work well for the garden. So if you look down there from the little garden area, this is my favorite tree to view from down there. It's one that gets this vibrant red-pink color or hot pink color, and in some cases a light pink color. Now, it's pretty short. It's only been in ground for 2 years, and it was one of those very small Japanese maple trees. This one was actually it was like a pint size, but I put it in ground, and it, instead of going straight up, it just grew in kind of this spread of branches. But I think that's okay. Once I get this area cleared, you will be able to see some of my autumn joy sedum. They are growing in a mist here. So boom, boom, boom. We do plan on putting some echinacea here as well. I have the tray that I started indoors. It's just sitting out for right now. Then down below me, there are a few hellebores. I wouldn't be able to tell you the name to them as I kind of forgot, but they're these lovely dark pink colors, and they mesh well for this area. I have the planting of 3. Going on its year 3, I do have this Fall Fiesta sugar maple. It's quite tall now, and this is the first time it's going to flower. Just meaning I've yet to see it flower until this year. By the way, all the garden steps you see, I created myself with these lovely bricks. There's a total of 3 steps so far, 1, 2, and 3. There's some more bricks over there that I'm using to work on the area, as well as if I move some of these things, these in specific, you'll be able to see that I created a garden bed that really just wraps around and leads to the step area. So the plants that can be found here would be daffodils, a few hellebores here and there, obviously our orange tulips, we've got a few blue primroses, 1 hydrangea off to this side, and then it kind of mirrors itself as we get over here, but changes up slightly as we run into a prostate pine. In the midst of it all stands 1 Japanese maple tree. This is the Fireglow Japanese maple. And its cousin bed is the Tobiyoshio Japanese maple tree. In this area, there is a total of 2 Japanese maple trees that kind of give this area dappled lighting during the summer, although not as much, as the trees aren't that well grown. And somehow, I always have kale come back here every single year. I think it's because I just don't pull it. You can see this here. This is my potted hosta. I think I still have the tag in there. Nope, that's not it. I found it. It's right here. And this tag's been here for quite some amount of years so far. Platinum Lily, Brine Cup, or is it? Yep, Brim Cup. It's a nice little hosta to grow inside this container. This area has definitely seen better days. It's mostly Japanese maple trees, a few tulips here and there. It does need to be de-weeded as there are a few weeds beneath my feet. One thing I'm learning is that the lupins are a readily seeder. These guys just pop up everywhere without a hitch. So you can see one here, here, and a lot more places than just that. I've been catching them all over the place. or if it's easy to see, you can see all of these here. I didn't manually place these seeds here. They fell over from a stalk, and I guess they just reseeded themselves. I was looking up, and then I seen Boots. Hello. Well, hello there, Boots. What are you doing looking outside the window, Boots? So, we're going to pretty much come to an end at the backyard garden tour, but back here, it is just a bunch more weeds and a couple of trees here and there. There's not too much to really show, other than the fact that we've been trying to get a few plants in here and there and added in a ton of mulch and compost to try and help with the establishment of some of these plants. In fact, I just seen a plant I didn't actually get in ground. It's still in its container over here. Whoopsie, that could have been bad. But if we panel this area, we're just gonna walk by and look at some of the Japanese maple tree areas that are also still plagued with weeds here and there. In fact, I'm really trying to clear the ground there. As you can see, I kind of started over in this area and have been working my way through slowly but surely. Here's a bit of a close-up in this area where you'll see hostas, oak leaf hydrangeas, and then a potted hydrangea, I believe by the name of, was it City Line Paris? City Line Paris. Then we would pretty much waltz our way back. But before I do, get a look at this patch of Fritillaria. It's like it's a subdued color, and it really works well here. Especially given the fact that we have a bright yellow Japanese maple tree, and then down below the subdued colors of purple Fritillaria. And one thing I've really been trying to work on is adding in some, I believe it's called, oh, if I can remember, oh, here it is, Brunnera. So this is the Sea of Hearts Brunnera, and we have Jack Frost Brunnera. And then 2 containers that obviously I didn't get in ground yet. We'll get them there eventually. Not in that specific area though. More Jack Frost, if not another type of Brunnera. And I realized with these Brunnera is that they really come up from seed. So if you let the seeds fall to the ground, they will show up in and amongst the garden. I've seen it in a few areas so far. In fact, there's one over here. Now, I did get a Japanese maple tree in ground over the past couple days. I'll probably roll the clip there where it shows me having the Japanese maple tree get in ground, and then I also labeled it with a label showing the date and the year. So I put April 2024 Katsura Japanese maple tree. We're gonna head back to the front garden as there was a few things I didn't really show off, like the rhubarb, which I think is interesting. We also have the side strip with a ton of ferns that are making their return after I cut them back. And I think these guys, at least, they have this light green tone to them, and then the erect form of it as it emerges really brings interest. But headed around this corner here, I do have a planting of Virginia, which is currently in flower. This area is a new area that I started working on this year. You can see this here. Although I will say I did put in ground, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, this weeping redbud tree called Golden Falls Circes. It's currently a little behind when it comes to flowering and opening up its leaves, but it's budding out, so it will eventually get there. I also placed it quite close to the building because it's only a weeper, and it says it gets about 2 foot wide, if not 3 foot wide. So that's not much. I do eventually want to deck out my stairway with a ton of pots if I can. One like right off on this step side, and then another off on this step side. I think what we'll do is seasonal potting interest for the step side. This is where most of the snakes kind of collect. They just vibe in this area. I also added a few logs here and there so they can hide. So down here, it's a concaved log, and I think it just works well for hiding, or just for the smaller snakes to hide inside. This area is full sun. It's pretty much going to part shade eventually in some amount of years, especially with the amount of Japanese maple trees in the area. You can see I have this drift of golden forest grass here. And we have a few hellebores. I think this hellebore does really well. I always cut it back and it comes back so strong. The leaves look so beautiful. And eventually, in a couple months here, I do have to spray it down because these guys really attract aphids, but it does keep the aphids off your other plants, so that's a plus. These tulips I've had for probably 4+ years now, or 4 years now. I think I placed them in ground at the end of 2019 in fall, and they've really whittled away. There's barely any left here. So 1, 2, 3, and a few back there. There was probably 100 in this area, and now they're all gone, or mostly gone, due to squirrels. But things like that happen. We got a few pretty ones back here as well. But alright guys, I'm gonna end the tour here, and I just saw Boots jump out the window. Oh, come here, Boots. Oh. But alright guys, I will see you guys next time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the small garden tour, or my little garden. See ya.